everyone, this is Adrian and in this video we're going to talk about things that inspired me or that influenced me growing up to become a writer and finally write a screenplay. So, let's get right into it. As a kid growing up, a big thing that influenced me or that I started to get into is horror movies and the horror genre in general. I remember being like, 3 or 4, and there's even pictures of me like when my parents, I guess it all started when they took me to amusement parks at Halloween, and there'd be like the haunted houses and all the different like haunted hay rides at Halloween. I'm sure you guys, on Halloween take your kids or go as when you were a kid or even now. I still love to do that. So I would always be terrified and never be able to like actually make it through the entire like haunted house or some haunted hayride but as I got older I like toughened up and overcame my fear and like just had fun. And but I always remembered that. So that was like the first encounter, I guess, with horror genre type stuff. Then when I got a little older, like, 10, 11, 12, I would always hang out with my friends and watch like horror movie marathons. They would come over to my house, or I would sleep over their house and have like slumber parties or, sleepovers with snacks. And we would watch, all types of horror movie marathons, like the slasher movies. That was more of like a specific horror genre that I really loved because one of my like best friends really loved, Jason and Freddy and Michael Myers and Chucky, like all the classic horror movie villains. And, we would go to Blockbuster when they were still alive. And because we were little, we had to be there with like our moms or a parent. And we would pick out, it was so much fun picking out a movie that we wanted to watch. And, the cover would be like, kind of, risky and, bloody, or a naked woman or something with like, or not naked, but, like in a bikini or like almost naked. And of course, like our, moms or parent that we were with be like, oh, you're not allowed to watch this movie. And we would have to like play it off and be like, no, it's okay. It doesn't look that bad. It's not, we heard reviews from where we don't know, but because there wasn't, where you could go on YouTube and find out a review. So we would have to play it off and be like, yeah, this is okay to watch. And, or we would just bring an older friend that would, wouldn't care about us watching it. And so that was really fun to like see if we could get away with it and actually, rent it and then sit home and, watch it. And then, as we would watch it, we would get scared or we would get excited about, watching some, nudity scene or whatever that's going to be coming out, coming in the movie, because we didn't know what to expect because we never saw those movies before. So it was just fun to like not have it spoiled right away. Like now you could just, whenever there's a new movie coming out, you can just hear it on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, and be like, now you know everything about the movie. Everything is spoiled. You have 14,000 reviews before, 2 weeks before the movie even comes out. So how can you truly enjoy the movie? But back then we could. So that was really fun. Another horror movie, genre that really influenced me was Tales from the Crypt, the TV show. It would be on every single night, and I would never be allowed to watch it. So I would always have to sneak late at night and, to the TV and, wait until my parents fell asleep. And then I would, sneak into the living room, turn on TV like really low volume and see some of the episodes. And sometimes I would get caught once my, parents, figured out what I was doing, and or they would hear me or whatever like that. So eventually they were like, okay, we'll let you, they compromise. They're like, okay, we'll let you watch some episodes, but first I need to check them out and make sure they're not that bloody or gory or have like extreme nudity or whatever. So, some episodes I'd be allowed to watch, But then when there'd be certain parts that, that would come up in the episode, they would switch the channel or get in front of the channel and be like, hey, what you doing? And then, so as I got older, I, watched all the Tales from the Crypt, and they were really cool. And so the horror movie genre like really influenced me because all I write is horror movies. So, that's the story with the horror movie genre. So the first director that influenced me, or specifically my style of writing, is James Cameron. Now, you can say whatever you want about him, like, he copied Terminator from an Outer Limits episode, whatever, or, Avatar was Dances with Wolves, with Smurfs, okay, Titanic, corny love story, but, I mean, not every director, no director is perfect. So, but I respect the guy because he's ahead of his time when it comes to innovation and ideas with movies and, inventions and all like that. And throughout the like generations, if you really like follow his career, he really like based on his creative ideas and inventions, he has impacted the movie industry like nobody else when it comes to technology and influencing the movies that come out based on the trends or the inventions that he has, invented or, contributed to, researching into and stuff like that. So, but what he specifically influenced me, in my writing is, well, first of all, he does exposition like nobody else. He figured out the perfect way to explain what is going on in a scene, or just to explain the situation in a way where you're not bored, or you're not losing interest, or you're not focusing on something else. Like in the midst of action, he can just throw in some exposition, and it's perfect. So that really helped me in my writing. And also the dialogue. Now I know what you're going to say. Oh, what about Titanic? That dialogue sucked. But I'm talking about if you really pay attention to his movies like I did, when it comes to characters like in a scene, like how he introduces a scene, he gets right into the dialogue, into the conversation, but he starts in the middle in the conversation. He doesn't start from the beginning. In a way, what I mean is this. Like instead of, introducing what is going on to the audience, from the beginning, in the sense like, oh, the story, this happened like this, and then this happened, and then this guy came. No, he starts right in the middle of the dialogue, and the way he presents it to the audience is as if it already has happened, and I'm just gonna throw in a couple of bullet points to get you caught up, and then I'm gonna finish what I'm talking about. I know it's probably confusing, but I'm telling you, the best example is watch Aliens. I'm telling you, you're probably thinking like, yo, I'm so confused, I don't know what the hell you're talking about right now. Watch Aliens. Whenever a certain scene happens and like it just starts, you got characters just, talking, having a conversation, like right in the middle of it. And somehow the dialogue that he, puts in there is just, you're able to just fall right into the scene and pick up where everything left off, and you don't even realize it's been left off. So the action or the dialogue starts right in the middle, and that really like had a profound influence on me, because whenever I write scenes, I don't waste your time in the scene, talking about, getting off on tangents of setting up the story before actually getting to the dialogue. Like, I just get right into it. Here we go. You got to listen to catch up, and then boom, So I know I didn't really explain it well, but I'm telling you, pay attention to Aliens, and even Terminator 2. That's a real good one too. You gotta listen to that. So that's how he influenced me when it came to my writing and dialogue. Another big director that really had a huge impact on my style of writing is Christopher Nolan. Now, if you all, watched his movies, they're all great and stuff like that. Not perfect. He could learn a thing or two from James Cameron when it comes to exposition, because he likes to, drag on and keep talking in, non-action parts, just boring exposition, too technical, drawn out. So he could learn a thing or two. Like I said, no director's perfect. But his style is, I guess you could call like realism in fantasy. I coined that. I don't know. I just came up with it now. So if you look at all his movies, or the majority of his movies, no matter how, crazy or unrealistic the genre is that he's doing, or how fantasy based it is, like for example, Inception. You got a dream within a dream within a dream. You're like, so how can that be real? Or Batman. How can Batman, a guy in a mask and flying around and fighting a clown, or how can that be real? Or even Interstellar, like we're gonna go through a wormhole and we're gonna go into the fifth dimension, and you're like, how can that happen? Even The Prestige, if you ever watched it, like I don't really want to give away the spoiler, but he mixes like reality with fantasy, but he tries to make any situation in the movie seem real, or how it could be real in real life. He really pushes the boundaries of what's plausible. And he makes any like crazy situation, like a dream within a dream, seem like in the world he sets up plausible. So all my screenplays that I write, no matter how crazy I make it, I try to throw in, well, could this really happen in the world I set up? If the world progressed or advanced in technology, could something be created enough to make this crazy fantasy thing really be true? Like Batman, he showed, okay, well, how can Batman really happen in the real world? Okay, a billionaire has all this military advanced technology that he uses. You're like, oh, okay, so the suit is actually like a military suit. Or how can he fly? Oh, okay, well, it's like this material that you put some electricity in it, and that's how you fly. Or what about the Batcave? Did he pay a bunch of contractors and then paid them billions of dollars to shut them up? Or he killed them off after that, and he paid his family members, their family members to keep quiet? No. He, built it himself, and he had that like, what's his name? Lucius Fox or whatever, Morgan Freeman character, like help him out secretly. And so even with the clown, with the Joker, you're like, how can this guy be a serious character that we can see as a credible threat? Oh, okay, so he's a guy, you don't really know too much about him, he's crazy, so just the way he's able to take any ridiculous concept and inject some reality in it. Even Interstellar, like he set that up like super technical though, where maybe it could happen in like 50 or 100 years, who knows. So that's how he influenced me, because the way I write now is because in a way, even though I write horror, if you think about it, like reality is scarier than fantasy. Like if it could happen to you, then that's more terrifying than if like, some dragon came and, ate you or something, or some dinosaur showed up and stepped on you. Like, but if, some guy in a clown suit came into your house, stabbed you to death, that's pretty crazy. But, it might have happened before, and it could happen, who knows. So that's how Christopher Nolan influenced my style of writing. So two more directors that I have to mention that really influenced me, and they're like total opposites, obviously. one better than the other, a whole lot better. But so Mel Gibson really influenced me. Say what you want about the guy. Like, South Park said, say what you want, but Mel Gibson really knows how to, do story structure. Like, you can hate on him on other parts, but when it comes to the movies he directed and the stories that, he put out there, like, you can't say nothing about him. I'm not talking about the historical, facts. You can dispute that all you want. But I'm talking about the story structure, the way he's able to tell a story to make you connect with the characters. So best example, obviously Braveheart, fantastic, story, Man Without a Face, Hacksaw Ridge more recently, Passion of the Christ. But I think Apocalypto, I'm really like gonna focus on this because Apocalypto like really had a profound influence on me when it came to telling a story. Because think about it, Apocalypto, probably one of his most underrated movies. He took, it's a story about a bunch of Mayans that lived, thousands of years ago. So to an audience, you're like, how the hell am I going to connect to these crazy guys? I mean, look at them. They're half naked. They got crazy tattoos and scars, and they're like eating raw meat, and you got other Mayans that are trying to kill them, and they're like cutting their hearts out for some sun deity or whatever they believe in. You're like, how the hell am I going to connect with these characters and actually care about them and actually be interested in watching from beginning to end? Well, Mel Gibson, the genius story writer that he is, he figured out a way to make you connect. He stripped away all the visual stuff, that made you go like, whoa, like what the hell's going on here? Who are these like, weird savage people, whatever. And he made you connect with them by showing you the way they interact amongst themselves. And if you really think about it, they're just like, regular, family people. They're interacting with their kids, interacting with their, brothers and sisters and moms and dads, and they're just having like fun conversations. They're, hunting, they're gathering, they're telling stories on their ancestors. It's just regular stuff. And then the threat is another set of people that come and invade, kill them, kill their families that by now you have invested in and you care about the individual, like mom and dad and brother and all that. And you're like, wait a minute, like, if you really break down at its core, they're just people like me. I'm with my brothers and sisters and mom and dad and talking and whatever. And, one day or back in the day or whatever, my ancestors experienced some other people coming in and killing them, or, whatever. I'm just saying that he really couldn't, made you care about them, and he made it relatable in some way. So that was like really cool because it made me think, I'm like, if he can do that with them, then I should be able to do it with, do it with any type of story that I write. So whenever I write a story, I try right off the bat to figure out the way. I'm like, okay, how am I going to make you care about this character? How am I going to make this character, even though he's doesn't seem relatable, I'm going to make him relatable even to the most common person. So that way you can have a connection and you care about them in the movie when something bad happens to them. If like a tragedy happens, if someone gets killed, if they get killed off, like you actually care. So that's like a big thing when it comes to horror movies. Why, for example, slasher is one of my favorite subgenres. Nobody, likes slashers because the directors or screenplay writers, they don't spend the time to build up the characters to make you care about them. So when they get killed off, you don't care about them. You're like, yeah, whatever. They was just there to for the comedy relief. He got killed off, great. Or she was there to show her boobs or whatever and have sex and, you know, visually I see whatever and then boom, she's gone, who cares? But because of Mel Gibson, he kind of like influenced me for how to write a character and make them connect with you. Now, M. Night Shyamalan, as much criticism as I give, and there's a lot that he well-deserved criticism, because when he first came out, you know, he had The Sixth Sense, and then he had, you know, Unbreakable and In Signs, and everyone was like, wow, this is the next big director, like, he's amazing, he can do no wrong. And I think, like, the problem with him is that he came out with so many hits, like, he peaked so early. And then I guess he got surrounded by yes men, or his head got too big, and nobody had the balls to be like, you know, maybe you should not do this. Maybe. So everything he did in his mind was more amazing and more amazing and more amazing than the previous thing that he did. And no one had, you know, all the yes men were like, oh yeah, this is great. This is amazing. This is so great. You know, you got to do this. He could do no wrong in his mind. So then when he started, you know, doing the Avatar Last Airbender and The Happening and Lady in the Water, oh my God, he just bomb after bomb after bomb. And I guess he's trying to make a comeback now, but I'm still cautious. I need to, you know, I haven't watched all his recent stuff that came out. I'm going to check it out eventually, but, you know, I'm cautious and stuff. So, but let's talk about how he influenced me. Really, like, I like the way he's able to tell a story without really saying anything. You know, without really saying much, or even the camera movement. Very minimal. You almost forget that the camera is even there in the scene, and you're just able to really watch what is going on. And he's able to tell the story in the scene with like minimal dialogue, minimal camera movement, and you know, that's real, like, that's haven't really been done before with, or he hasn't, no other directors have been able to replicate that as well as he used to. Like I said, in his earlier movies, he did that beautifully, like The Sixth Sense, like Signs, Unbreakable, very underrated movie. But if you watch the camera work and the dialogue and the way, like, the characters are just looking at each other with expressions, or he's holding up like a picture. That's another thing he likes to do. Instead of doing like a 10-minute back and forth conversation, he could take a 10-minute conversation and turn it into a 3-second like conversation with just showing a picture that, you know, a picture tells a thousand, well, what's the, I forget, whatever. A picture tells 1,000 words or whatever. Help me out, guys. I forget what it is. It's early. I can't think. So, he's able to just to show a picture, or, you know, show a little headline on the newspaper, or whatever. And he's able to just tell a great story or dialogue just by nothing. Really nothing. Or very minimal nothing. So that's, you know, that really stuck in my mind. Even The Village. I put The Village up there and you're thinking like, what the hell why are you even putting The Village? The Village sucked. Like, yes, it sucked. But I see what he was trying to do. And I think The Village came right after Signs, so he was still in that like mindset of like, he still had creativity, he still wasn't like fully surrounded by yes men. His head wasn't fully that big enough where he thought he was untouchable. So I see what he was trying to do in The Village. And if, like, you know, if you just tweak it or rewrite a little bit of it, and like if the M. Night who wrote Sixth Sense wrote The Village like early on, like let's say instead of writing The Sixth Sense, his first movie, let's say he wrote The Village, like his first movie was The Village, it would have been amazing. It would have been like just like The Sixth Sense or even better. So, but he wrote The Village when he was starting to get full of himself. But I see what he was trying to do, and if he could have like reworked it, then it could have been like just as good as Signs or Unbreakable or even The Sixth Sense. So that's how he influenced my writing. All right, now let's talk about the specific movie that made me become a screenplay writer. This movie, No Country for Old Men, had such a profound influence on me that it made me sit down and write, like officially write my first screenplay just because of this movie. You know, it motivated me so much to write my first screenplay. Now, when I first watched this movie, I thought it was good. I didn't think it was the best movie of all time, and I still don't think it's the best movie of all time, but it's pretty damn close. And at first I was like, yeah, it's good. All right, cool. You know, interesting, like, and when I saw the ending, I'm like, yo, this movie is trash. So after I saw the ending, I'm like, I don't get the ending. The ending's boring. After all this build-up, you ended with some guy talking about some dream, or some guy, you know, talking at the breakfast table about some, some friend of his that worked at a slaughterhouse, and, you know, he fell and then he broke his arm, and then after that, he couldn't use his arm. I'm like, yo, this is trash. This movie's trash. So I actually turned on the movie. At first I was like, yeah, it's good. Nothing special, but it's good. And then when I saw the ending and I tried to figure out, I'm like, yo, this is trash. But then I rewatched the movie a bunch of times, and then when I, looked up online what the ending actually meant, I was like, yo, this is the greatest movie I've ever fucking seen. Like, that's literally what I thought in my mind. And it had a profound change in my writing. Because I'm not going to do a full extensive breakdown right now, but let's just mention some parts that really affected me. So, this movie taught me how to introduce a character. Specifically, how to introduce a villain. Now remember, when you introduce Anton Chigurh, what does he do? He gets caught. You're like, okay, well, how did this guy get caught? Alright, whatever. And then he is in the police station, and then the cop, he's just making a phone call, and then he just casually gets up. Anton Chigurh gets up, slowly walks over behind the cop, chokes him out, and look at this guy's face. You could tell that this guy is sick. He is crazy. You do not want to mess with this guy. So that really taught me how to introduce characters in general, but mostly characters, villains, how to write villains, how to introduce villains. And then, for example, here's another scene that really had an effect on me. The scene where he's walking to the convenience store with this old guy, and he's flipping the coin. He's like, choose heads or tails. Now that scene was not supposed to be tenseful, but it was like one of the most tense scenes, suspenseful, terrifying scenes I've ever seen. And, I've seen almost every horror movie there is with blood and guts and terror and all that. But this movie was just the way, the music, or I don't even know if it was music there. I don't even remember. But just the way they wrote it, the dialogue and the expressions, and he wasn't even threatening the guy with any weapons. He was just saying, pick. And he's like, well, why do you want me to pick? What do I, what's the stakes? He's like, everything. The stakes is everything. It was just amazing. Then I got, as I looked up online of the symbolism and all that, and, the way the camera angles and the way it was framing, and, that got a little too technical, but it, it showed me all the symbolism. For example, when the sheriff was gonna, he's looking for Anton Chigurh, and he's gonna go to the motel, and he sees that there's a little, the door, the lock was blown out, and you could see a little circle of light going into the room, and he's standing there. He draws his gun. He's so nervous. He's like, what if he's in there? Should I go in there? But if he's in there, he might kill me. So he kicks the door, and luckily he wasn't in there. So in a way, it was like flipping the coin. He took a chance, heads or tails, live or die. That little circle of light where the lock was blown out represented the coin. That silver or that gold, beam of light going into the circle was the coin. And him kicking the door open or not going in there, like open or closed, he was flipping the coin symbolically. And I was like, wow. Like, you got all that from that scene, really? Also, another scene was the woman at the end. You're like, so this guy, Anton Chigurh goes in to, kill this woman, and she, he flips the coin, and she doesn't want to choose. But he still kills her. You don't see it. You don't hear it. It's just like a wide shot of the house outside, and he steps out. And you're like, you still don't know if he killed her. Is it heads or tails? Did she live or die? And then all of a sudden, what he does is he looks at the bottom of his shoes to check if there's blood on them. That lets the audience know he killed her. She chose wrong. Well, she didn't choose at all. So he killed her. So she decided, the best way to win is not to play the game. Well, even when you don't play the game, you still lose. You can't avoid it. It's your destiny. So it was just cool to let the audience know just by him checking his shoes for blood. It told an entire story of the scene just by doing that. And I was like amazed. And also Anton Chigurh, that's brilliant when it comes to names. So the proper name that this character is named, influenced me by, it taught me how to properly name the characters in my movie, in my story. Because names can really let you know, in a way, the character background just based on their names. If he's a tough guy, if he's a wimp, if he's a mysterious guy, just based on their names. You could do that, a lot of symbolism with their names. So Anton Chigurh, they even joked in the movie. They're like, Sugar? What kind of scary villain is named Sugar? And they're like, nah, it's Chigurh. Now, just by changing the pronunciation of that name, you turn him from a joke, from a sissy, Anton Chigurh, to the most scariest villain that you never want to encounter, Anton Chigurh. Kind of like a growl. So that really influenced me in picking the right names. Now let's get to the ending. I'm not gonna, get too deep into it, but basically it's a lot of symbolism in this ending. When he was saying his friend about working at a slaughterhouse and he fell and he broke his arm, and then after that he was never able to properly lift his arm, and then he had to quit being, working at the slaughterhouse and killing all the cows and the pigs. And so what happens at the end? Anton Chigurh, he's about to get away. He's driving in the car. Boom! Gets into a car accident. Car hits him. He gets out. He's all bloodied. And he breaks his arm. So some kids, come by and they're like, hey, mister, you okay? So, they help him out. They give him his shirt. He puts his broken arm into a sling. So you see the symbolism there? The mirroring. The mirror image of the two scenes of the story. How his friend was slaughtering all these cows. But then he had an accident where he couldn't use his arm and he could never slaughter cows anymore. Just like Anton Chigurh, after slaughtering all these innocent people, got into a car accident and he broke his arm, and he's never going to be able to use his arm to pick up a gun or a weapon or be that efficient, or that, quiet enough, or whatever I'm trying to say. He's not going to be able to be that efficient killing machine like he was. And he might not ever kill another person again. So it's kind of like a punishment. Like God was punishing him. So that's how this movie, out of all the movies ever, this movie had the greatest influence on me. And it got me to say to myself, you got to stop talking and start doing some action. Sit down and write your screenplay no more talking the talk, you gotta walk the walk. So thank you to No Country for Old Men, and definitely check out this movie if you haven't already. Now, the last person that truly had an impact on me in my writing is Edgar Allan Poe. Now, I'm not going to go into some detailed, historical biography about him. I'll save that for another movie. But, in school we would read some of his poems, which I'm sure they're very famous. Even as a kid watching horror movies, I would watch Vincent Price, who I love, and he would, in his early movies, he would play Edgar Allan Poe, or the poems would be turned into movies, or the stories would be turned into movies, and he would play the characters in those movies, and that's how I learned really about Edgar Allan Poe. And then we would read some of his poems in school, and then I got a gigantic thick book of all his poems and stories, and I just sat down and read a couple of them, and even the unknown or not as popular stories and poems, I basically tried to read them all. Yeah, so many. But I'm sure you heard of The Black Cat, The Fall of House of Usher, the Mask of the Red Death, The Pit and the Pendulum, The Telltale Heart. I'm sure of some poems you heard of, Lenore, or The Raven, one of his famous poems of all time. Quote the Raven, nevermore. Once upon a midnight dreary, while I pondered weak and weary. So I'm sure you heard that. But definitely check out some of his other poems and stories, because they're really just as good, if not some are better. But just the way, his dark and dreary and gloomy, and his visual, death and gore and stuff like that. I just loved the suspense, and really, if you ever watch The Pit and the Pendulum, it's just some guy laying there. He just wakes up. He doesn't know how he got there, but he's just there, tied to some stone or whatever, and then there's a pendulum swinging back and forth above him. And just the mental torture that he's going through, or the Telltale Heart. A lot of mental torture, the characters that he writes about are going through. Like the Telltale Heart, some guy kills his friend or a neighbor, and then he gets haunted by his beating heart. Or the Black Cat, same thing. He kills this guy who had a cat, but then the cat, I think he kills the cat too. And, the cat haunts him. So it's I guess he influenced me about how to write my characters, and really, get deep into their mental anguish or mental torture, or the problems that they're dealing with, how they are affected mentally, and that is brought out in the writing. And then when the reader or the audience sees these characters, what they're dealing with, then that is getting transferred onto the audience or to the reader, about they connect with their mental torture or mental anguish. So that really how Edgar Allan Poe helped me with my writing. So definitely check out some of his work, and he's brilliant. So thanks for watching, guys. Please like and share this video, comment down below, hit me up on Facebook and Twitter. Let me know what are some of your influences, people or movies, or anything that helped you to start writing. Please subscribe, help me grow the channel, hit notifications, and until next time, thanks a lot.